Should under 16s be banned from social media? And joining me to discuss this are Jennifer Powers, former government special advisor, now director of the Unplugged Coalition, journalist and author Ella Whelan, and Cosima Wiltshire from FlipGen, an organisation set up to support the digital well-being of children and young people. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for coming on. Ella, I'm going to start with you because I think at the centre of all of this, the basis of all this, it's protecting children. Okay, so we think of that, what's already in place. We've got protections around alcohol and drugs and gambling. So shouldn't social media companies be treated in exactly the same way?
Social media is not the same as drinking beer. And I think we're probably all in agreement that children need to be policed and protected and regulated when they're using any aspect of the internet. I think my argument is just that it's parents that make those decisions or are in control. I mean, I think it's we're in the midst of some kind of crazy moral panic at the moment where social media is being talked about as if it's this unique evil, when in fact it's just a modern day challenge of the likes which parents are used to, whether it's, regulating how much television your kids watch, how much sweets they eat, all the rest of it, how much time they use a mobile phone for is very easily policed. You don't need a PhD in computer science or be able to work around all these VPNs and everything. You just yoink, take the phone out of their hand.
You see social media companies as equal then to television and that sort of thing in terms of the dangers?
It's much more challenging because obviously television there's a few channels. The world of the internet can be a very scary place, but this is not a challenge that's insurmountable for parents. And I really think that the kind of state interference into the sacredness of family life, the privateness of family life, is a bigger problem than social media or any kind of questions about addictiveness. I think parents need to get a grip. We need to start reclaiming the fact that it's our kids, we're in control. Back off government.
Well, Jennifer, what do you make of that? Government back off, this is all down to the parents.
Well, listen, where I will agree with Ella is that this is not like social media is not like television or anything. No, it's a very different time of addictive by design content and platforms. And so it's meaningfully different than television or radio or any other technical advance over time. This is the parenting challenge of our time. Of that, I can also agree. However, this goes beyond what any one parent can do, because I know many parents where they have drawn the line and yet this content is pushed in their child's face. We've had children forced to see murders, grotesque pornography. It's beyond what anyone can do in their family. It's a class of collective action problem. And, I really want to push back against this moral panic claim. I think that's absolutely wrong because we have the evidence. It's a significant and growing base of evidence that shows twice as likely to be anxious, 3 times as likely to be clinically depressed if you have high social media usage, increased loneliness, less happy, more cyberbullying. The list goes on. And so really, there is a role for the parents, absolutely right. But there is also a role for the state. And this is where I really welcome what the Lords have done. And I really hope that the backbenchers of Labour do not let this government get away with kicking this issue down the road with a consultation. The parents of Britain want action now.
Well, this is what's interesting. What do the parents want, Cosima? Because depending on who you ask, you get a very different response, don't you? Even this morning on Sunday with Laura Kunsberg, we heard from 2 bereaved mothers, including Esther Jai, of course, saying that any delay to a social media ban for young people could mean more and more children are being harmed.
I think from my end as a young person, I'm 19. I have advocated in this space for quite a few years. I started when I was 13, and I'm also a researcher at UCL. And I think from my point of view, I 100% see where the panic is coming from. The digital world can be terrifying at times, but for me, that terror doesn't come from how old you are. I, last year, despite all of my work and everything, fell down the trap of eating disorder, influencer content, and the pervasive harm that comes with that. But I was over 16. And so when it comes to sort of the government action, I think that a blanket ban is a really blunt approach that doesn't quite get to the root of the problem, which is the fact that the content is there at all. And I think that in terms of, what is classed as legal but harmful content, eating disorder content, suicide prevention, things like that, I think that those pieces of content, it doesn't matter how old you are, it's really harmful. That needs to be addressed. But I think a blanket ban doesn't quite get to it.
So what would be the answer then in that case? If not a blanket ban, you know, who's responsible? The parents, the young children, the schools, education, you know, where?
Yeah, I think the responsibility is shared. I think in terms of the government's responsibility, I think they have a job to empower parents with the information they need to understand the digital world so that they can parent their children, because that is their job. But I don't think they can do it alone. I think that some effort needs to be made to get rid of the most harmful content, which isn't quite being done properly at the moment.
It's really interesting that this new, because we had this discussion with the Online Safety Act.
Yeah.
This new discussion about the ban, if you look at the government's press release, it's not really to do with content, you know, seeing horrific things online. It's actually mostly about infinite scrolling, the streaks, and the rest. It's about time on social media. So that is, you know, you don't have, you could be the most pathetic parent and control that. You know, it doesn't, this is not rocket science.
Are parents
here.
equipped for
you
that?
just, of course you're equipped for it. You just take the phone off the kid. Hang on, the point I'm trying to make is that the world is full of scary things for parents and children alike, and you don't want your child to see, you know, things that are age inappropriate or, you know, messed up in terms of eating disorders or suicide or all the rest of it. But it's out there, and what you do as a parent, a confident parent full of authority, is you say, in our house, this is what we think. These are our family values. Not influenced by experts or the state or looking to pass the buck to anyone else. This is what we believe. And you hope that if you do that successfully, your kid goes out into a world of danger and frightening things and thinks, well, what does my family believe? Let me apply that here. And if we start handing over all our power and our confidence and our authority to the state, to some government minister or even the Lords,
Ella, it's a straw man argument. It's a straw man argument. Because this is not about giving all the power to the state or interfering in the family. Listen, the ban is not an appropriate word. I fall into the trap sometimes of using the word ban as well. If we're talking about the Australian model, it's actually putting an onus back on tech companies to stop children from having their own accounts. It is just one piece in the puzzle of protecting our children. They can still access the content via a browser. How would it be enforced? The onus is on the tech platforms. But they don't make. If they don't make.
We can't trust them to get rid of the harmful content. How can we trust them to?
Excuse me. The platform has to make all reasonable efforts, because they are putting, in Australia at least, they are putting sanctions so that the tech companies. We know it's worked already a month in Australia. Because 4 points.
A month.
4 points
be in reality a month.
If I can just get in
December there, so we have very little information to go on of its success.
No, but we do, because we know 4.7 million accounts have been deactivated within that age group. So the issue here is not that it's the whole picture. I think we still need to talk about devices. There's still a role for parents in this. But this is a meaningful effort. It's a modest effort, but it completely reframes the debate and makes smartphones and social media platforms and devices for adults, and sends a very clear message to parents and to kids that they're not appropriate for children.
Sends a message.
And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful.
We're not
thing to do.
Cosmo, can I ask, what age are you, Cosmo? If you don't mind me asking? So you're 19. So you know you're aware of some of what is available out there, and maybe some of your friends who've been affected by this. And when we talk about, you know, the impact that has on you, would it have helped not, you know, if you were, say, 15, 14 years old, not being able to go onto these apps, or would you have found it elsewhere?
I think people would have found it another way. I think the problem is that when we take away the mainstream platforms that we have some control over, that have some guidelines, though not perfect, that are regulated, we run the risk of pushing young people into fringe platforms. And I don't mean the dark web, and I know that's been talked about. I mean that forums and things like that have no restrictions. I think it's a really... If I was 14, 15 and social media had been turned off, okay, some things I wouldn't have come across. I would have seen them elsewhere. I think the problem is that the content is there in the first place.
That's not a good enough argument, because you know what? We have speed limits. Because we think that
it's not the same as cars, because...
Cosima, let me finish my point. We have speed limits because it makes everybody safer. Does that mean some people don't break the speed limit? Yes, of course they do. But we still have rules, because we set down rules all the time. When is it appropriate for children to join the army or get married?
By design, but you can make the internet safer by design, and I think that's the root of the cause.
And when
I think that's more important. I think that we have to really focus on making the platforms safer, so the parents can take back control and they can parent their children. At the moment where we are, they're struggling because there's so much harmful content. I think the platforms need to be safer. Parents need to be given the information, be that through civil society, the government helping. We are to be holistic.
We are aware of, you know, statistically and anecdotally about what damage has been done to children through social media. So at what level then, Ella, what level do you feel, what level of damage would justify state intervention?
Well, I mean, kids can get really messed up from what they see in what they read in books, what they see in television, what they read online. I think you've got a really confident young person here, able to outline all the arguments of why social media and the internet isn't this unique evil. I mean, this government's trying to enfranchise 16-year-olds, not letting them on Twitter, which is where politics happens today. Before then, seems to me a kind of mess up in thinking. You shouldn't be so condescending to what she's trying to say, because actually, I think young people, most of the time, young teenagers are using social media to put pictures up of their cats and things like that. This isn't like we haven't got a warped generation who are all doing sort of sick and evil things online. But also, I think the more the state intervenes into family life, whether that's toothbrushing in nurseries, whether that's social media bans.
I'm afraid so.
I'm just going to say, listen,
Down the moral panic.
listen. The parents of Britain support a ban. I appreciate both your viewpoints, but in reality, the vast majority of parents and young people want greater restrictions on social media, and I urge the government to bring them in.
Okay, thanks very much. We'd have to leave it there.